France's main far-right party, the National Rally, has made significant strides in the country's parliamentary elections. A majority of the party's candidates have taken a lead in the first round of polling, which happened last Sunday. Together with its allies, it rallied close to 11 million French voters, clocking upwards of 33% of the vote. That is the highest that the far-right has ever had in French history. This brings the National Rally closer to be able to form the next government after the second round of voting happens this weekend. The snap elections were called 3 weeks ago after President Emmanuel Macron's party suffered a resounding defeat in the European elections. His party finished third, with the left-wing coalition of Jean-Luc Mélenchon in second place, reaching 28% of the vote. With this historic result, the National Rally is now closer than ever before to forming a government. Jordan Bardella, a 28-year-old rising star in the National Rally, would become Prime Minister if his party secures an absolute majority. That is more than half of the 577 seats that went to elections. Marine Le Pen, who is the president of the party and a three-time presidential candidate, celebrated the party's victory by attacking President Macron. She said this was a testament to the willingness of the French people to turn the page after 7 years of what she called a contemptuous and corrosive government by Macron. Le Pen took over the reins of her party from her father, Jean-Marie Le Pen, who's been convicted multiple times in the past for anti-Semitic and outright racist hate speech. The younger Le Pen has spent the last decade and a half almost trying to change the image of her party. An absolute majority for the far right would potentially mean drastic changes in France's international policy, and that includes its support to Ukraine in the war against Russia. Prime Minister hopeful Bardella says he remains in favor of continuing both logistical as well as defense support to Ukraine. But he has two red lines that he would not cross. Number one, the sending of French troops to Ukrainian territory. And number two, the sending of long-range missiles which could directly strike Russian cities. This would stop long-range scalp missiles to be delivered to Kiev. It will also put an end to Macron's promise to send French military instructors to Kyiv. The question remains whether the level of funding for Ukraine would change under a new National Rally government. Bardella recently said that Russia was a multidimensional threat both to France and to Europe. He's been trying to distance his party from what has historically been a pro-Russia stance. His party leader, Marine Le Pen, had gone to Moscow in 2017. She traveled all the way and met with Russian President Vladimir Putin. She is avowedly a bit of a fangirl of Putin. She has been less critical of Putin than other mainstream European leaders since this war began 2 years ago. But the biggest change that France could see if a far-right government comes to power would be in domestic affairs. Jordan Bardella says if his party forms the next government, that he will greatly reduce immigration, he will cut down taxes, and he will crack down on crime. But the National Rally is the heir to a political tradition in France which is associated overtly with racism, anti-Semitism, and the denial of the Holocaust. Under Le Pen Jr., the party has distanced itself from its past, but some basic philosophies remain embedded, which is that immigrants pose a threat to France's security, to its economy, and to its national identity. Among the plans of the far right are stripping away what is an automatic right for any child who turns 18 to get French citizenship, even if that child is born to non-French parents. This was automatic when the child turned 18. This is something that Bardella and his party want to end. They also want to end free medical treatment for anyone who is undocumented, restricting the number of citizens who's got second passports from taking up any sensitive jobs like running a nuclear plant, jobs in the sensitive and strategic defense sector. Bardella also wants to block convicted criminals from living in public housing. He wants to slash the country's sales tax on all forms of energy, from petrol and diesel all the way to electricity. But how he's going to do all of these things is not entirely clear. His party released a 20-page program. It's got sweeping ideas, but it's thin on details. And over the past few weeks of furious campaigning, Bardella has even backpedaled on some of these pledges. But on the most controversial ideas, like the stripping away of automatic citizenship rights, he wants to put that in place immediately. But these moves are likely to face pushback both from President Emmanuel Macron as well as from the country's Constitutional Council, which is the highest court in France. But the electoral math could also be a test for the far right. Bardella's party and its allies won about 33% of the popular vote in the 577-member National Assembly that was in the first round of a two-stage election. But only 38 of their candidates won their seats outright. Most of the remaining candidates will face a runoff second vote that'll happen this Sunday. A national movement has been building across the country to try and prevent the far right from gaining an absolute majority. So what has happened is more than 200 of the main challengers in these constituencies have bowed out wherever there is a three-way race. So now it's a two-way race in many of these constituencies, with the far right taking on the combined forces of both Mr. Mélenchon's party as well as Mr. Macron's party. What it means is that the extra votes from this united left bloc will go to the strongest opponent, whoever he or she is, who is best placed to defeat the far-right candidate. Bardella has said he will not take up the job of Prime Minister if he does not get an absolute majority, and for that he needs half of the National Assembly, which is 289 seats. Bardella has promised to carry out the party's long-held tenet of national preference, which means giving French citizens favoured treatment over foreigners for certain government jobs, for benefits, for subsidies. Allocating benefits by separating people based on where they were born is against the fundamental constructs of the French Republic, which of course are that all citizens are equal. Equality is enshrined in the principles of the founding documents, the document of enlightenment, and enshrined in the Declaration of the Rights of Man way back in 1789, right at the end of the French Revolution. That is a foundational document of the French Republic. If Bardella, Le Pen and their party are in a position to form the next government, then you can be rest assured that France is going to see some fundamental changes, not just in who gets what benefits, but fundamentally in the identity and the idea of who actually represents the French Republic and who is really French and who isn't.